Oh, you all right? I'm sorry. My therapist says I'm still working through my relationship with Mom. Trying to recreate my sense of isolation as a child so I get myself addicted to these abusive, degrading relationships.
Sliders, please stop. Hello everyone, I'm Matt Mitrovich, the Alternate Historian, and welcome back to ReSliders, my retrospective on the cheesy 1990s alternate history TV show, Sliders. You know, it was completely unplanned that my next video would also cover a gender dystopia, but here we are. Our heroes arrive in a world that seems to be similar to their own until they see a press conference given by President Hillary Clinton, played by professional Hillary impersonator Teresa Barnwell. This causes them to realize that they are in a world where the traditional gender roles have been reversed. Women are the ones who work in the office and run the country, hell, even Jane Pauley is the Pope, while men stay home and take care of the kids. It's not clear when history changed. They mention at some point women taking over a couple centuries ago, somehow without the men complaining. There is also reference to a great national plebiscite, which led to the current state of affairs in America, but nothing is elaborated on. IMDb said Susan B. Anthony was president of the United States in the 19th century, and TV Tropes said the point of virgins for this earth happened during the Crusades, but I don't remember either being mentioned at the episode. We do know, however, that since women have taken over, all crime and war have been eradicated, and we learned this while the Sliders hang out in an alternate San Francisco, in the state of California, in the United States of America. How exactly do you manage that, given American history? Did Britain just let America go without a fight? Did the Native Americans all move away voluntarily? Did Mexico just give everything north of the Rio Grande to America on its birthday? Okay, right off the bat, this isn't a very believable alternate history. But does the story save it at all? Well, not really, but I'll explain as I go along. Anywho, the timer tells our heroes that they have 6.5 weeks in this timeline before the next portal opens. Low on cash, they decide to get jobs to survive. Wade gets lucky and finds a job on the re-election staff for Mayor Anita Ross. She even gets Quinn a job as a secretary. Arturo does interview for a job, but angered about how he is being mistreated because of his gender, he goes on a rant, which catches the attention of a journalist/men's rights activist, a legit one, not the crybaby fascist you find on the internet, who offers Arturo an opportunity to run for mayor of San Francisco. Despite not having any political experience and also needing to leave this world in a few weeks, Arturo accepts the offer, thinking he could inspire men to rise up from their second-class status. The announcement that Arturo is running is treated as a joke by the news, which on one hand is pretty understandable given how absurd Arturo's campaign is.
You want me to kiss that baby?
Can we get votes?
Sir, I need to kiss your baby. Sir? Oh, come on.
But is also oddly ignorant of women's role in politics in the 1990s. I'm not going to pretend the 90s were a gender utopia, but female politicians were a thing back then and before. I mean, just look at this list of women senators who served in the 90s. By making it seem shocking that a man would run for public office in this alternate timeline, the producers of Sliders essentially made an alternate history where things are worse for men than they are for women in our timeline's 90s. This sort of undermines whatever kind of message Sliders is trying to get across. You see, you can look at the weaker sex as a walk a mile in someone else's shoes alternate history. In these types of stories, marginalized groups are given a different history where they are on top of the power structure, while the people previously on top, usually white, heterosexual, cisgendered males, are put on the bottom. A popular version of this style of alternate history includes Lion's Blood by Stephen Barnes, where white Europeans are used as slaves in the plantations of the African colonizers of America. Now, these stories can be a good way to teach a lesson, because some people can't imagine something is a problem for someone else until they personally experience it. Sort of like how right-wing personality Meghan McCain became a supporter of paid maternity leave after giving birth to her child, despite being opposed to it in the past. The problem is you have to be careful about how much you flip the script. Make things too terrible, and the audience you're trying to reach won't find it believable, and whatever message you're trying to get across will be lost on them. For example, I noticed that the Sliders fandom seems to refer to this alternate history as feminist world. Now, I know feminism has different meanings depending on who you ask, but I don't think you want your fans equating a movement that wants to create equality between the sexes with a world governed by an ideology of female superiority. You're not helping people understand the issues women face by going overboard in your reverse gender discrimination alternate history. Moving along, we get some weird out-of-character moments from Wade when she learns of Arturo's plan. She actually approves of the status of men and women in this timeline and thinks Arturo just can't handle what it's like to be a woman, while referencing the sexism she has experienced. To be fair, she probably did experience sexism as a woman in the 90s, but as someone who has been supportive of intervening in alternate timelines in the past, it seems weird she is suddenly against it. Maybe this would make sense if her character was someone who often rallied against how men treated women, but we haven't seen that so far. Instead, we watch her be blind to how poorly men, including her friends and boyfriend, are treated. I mean, I think she and Quinn are together. Another character refers to Quinn as her boyfriend, and Quinn also dries her hair once, which doesn't seem like something two people who are just friends would do. I don't know, it's not clear to me. Also, Rembrandt hooks up with a woman who lies to him about being a record producer, and she has a long history of emotionally and mentally abusing men. And oh my god, why does Rembrandt keep getting these abusive women storylines? I'm not going to talk about the subplot anymore. Anywho, Arturo's campaign proves to be less of a joke than expected as he begins to climb in the polls, which leads to him getting bomb threats at his office. Meanwhile, Mayor Ross asks Quinn to watch an ad, which points out that Arturo hasn't provided any evidence about his history and background, such as being a physics professor. This leads Wade and Quinn fighting, as Quinn believes Wade was the one who told Mayor Ross about Arturo's lack of credentials. Wade denies this, saying he could have come from anywhere, but Quinn isn't buying it and he quits working for Mayor Ross. Honestly, I'm on Wade's side in this fight. I mean, Arturo is running for public office after all, so there is going to be some scrutiny about his background, and it's not like he can just provide the paperwork himself, given that he is stuck surfing the multiverse. Even if they do have doppelgangers in this timeline, there's no guarantee their histories will sync. Even worse, if they do have doppelgangers, some journalist or agent of Mayor Ross is going to notice there are two identical Arturos running around. It's honestly amazing that Arturo's campaign has lasted this long given that problem. Anywho, Quinn catches up with Arturo, who seems excited about how the campaign is doing and thinks he can really do some good, and even says,
"I feel like Martin Luther King must have felt on the march in Selma."
"Oh no, Art, please don't compare yourself to Martin Luther King Jr. Ugh." Well, after this unfortunate moment, Quinn realizes that Arturo is thinking of staying in this timeline if he wins. This feeling, however, doesn't last long, as Arturo is almost assassinated by a man. This upsets Arturo enough that he decides things have gone too far. That said, he doesn't drop out of the election, feeling like it would be too great of a disappointment to the men who have supported him, and it might also push back the progress on men's rights. Instead, he decides to pull a Muskie, a reference to Senator Edmund Muskie, a 1972 Democratic presidential candidate who, when accused of being prejudiced toward Americans of French-Canadian descent, tried to give a speech defending himself where it appeared he was crying. He was mocked in the media for it, and it killed his campaign. So during a televised debate between Arturo and Mayor Ross, Arturo tells Ross after she said something incredibly sexist that she had hurt his feelings, and he ran off the stage pretending to cry. But Rutro and the producer's S-level shenanigans, people responded well to Arturo's crybaby act, gaining him a lot of sympathy votes. Thus, on election night, it is too close to call, and Arturo now struggles with whether he is going to stay as the minutes click down on the counter. Arturo feels somewhat confident enough that he bets Wade he will win and promises to be her servant for as long as they are in the next world, should he lose, while Wade promises to give him a really intense massage. Ew. But alas, CNN calls it for Ross, and the sliders disappear into the wormhole. We next see our heroes enjoying the sun on the beach while Arturo grumpily serves them drinks. But wait! Dewey defeats Truman, and the other news stations call it for Arturo. Arturo's campaign manager tries to give him the good news, but he has disappeared, which I guess might cause some chaos. I mean, there have been death threats and at least one assassination attempt on Arturo, and now after he won historic victory against a woman, suddenly he disappears? While last being seen with someone on Ross's staff? I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it would be reasonable to think that Ross had something to do with Arturo's disappearance, meaning the sliders may have caused the mother of all political scandals for this world. And who knows how that would change the status of the sexes in this alternate timeline. And that is the weaker sex, and yeah, it's not good. It was awkward and uncomfortable to watch, and not helped at all by how heavy-handed the producers were in showing a world where the traditional gender roles were switched. To be fair, maybe they were not trying to get a message across and were just being funny, but that doesn't mean they succeeded. Honestly, I was so annoyed by this episode, I actually wrote up my own scenario for this timeline that seems more plausible to me. I'm not going to share it here, but if you are one of my patrons, you might see it on Patreon. In the meantime, if you want a good story about a man trying to succeed in a woman's world, check out The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller. Well, that's it to say in the subject. If you enjoy what I do, please like, comment, subscribe, share this video, or support me on Patreon. I'm Matt Mitrich, the Alternate Historian. Bye.